Cool. Um, Hey everyone, good morning, good evening to everybody who's here. Welcome to the November edition of the Radius Community Call. I'm Reshma, I'm a product manager with the Radius team. I'll be hosting today's community call. Let's get right into the agenda. We wanted to extend welcome to the Radius community, share some updates on the recent community events and activities that we participated. Also share some updates on the Radius roadmap and the .39 and .40 release. We have some cool demos lined up. A couple of community members are presenting today. And there's a demo from our Radius team as well on user-defined types. And then we'll open up the floor for a Q&A. So we'd like to extend welcome and cover some logistic here. This call is definitely for you. We are here to share latest about what's happening behind the scenes on Radius and what's upcoming. Please utilize the chat to ask any questions you might have related to Radius. Also, if you have questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand and we will unmute you. We also have the Radius team in the chat, so they should be able to help with the questions. We also have a dedicated Q&A at the end, so you can hold your questions until the end of the call as well. So just a quick reminder for folks who are new here, we have a Google group for all the email announcements about Radius. Please join the Google group. So there'd just be one or two email updates that we send every month on the release updates and the community call invites. We participated in, one of the Radius maintainers, Ryan Novak, participated at a couple of panel talks at KubeCon last week. So I've linked those panel talk videos here. They are out. The first one is about the panel sharing their journey as maintainers of open source or CNCF projects. They shared, they have a discussion about their first open source project and the struggles of being a maintainer and share some insights there. The second panel is about the CNCF Tag App Delivery Group sharing the thoughts on how orgs can deliver cloud-native apps at scale. So this talk basically covers all the applications, platforms, infrastructure, how platform engineers could enable developer experiences, the tools and the like. And the discussion is basically around that. Feel free to check them out. So both these have links that will take you to the videos. We also participated at a pre-day event, which is the Backstage Con. Will Ty and Ryan Novak from the Radius maintainer team gave a lightning session on how the Radius dashboard leverages Backstage to build visualization of cloud-native apps. The link actually gives you a PDF of the presentation. We haven't gotten the video yet. Once the video is out, we'll circulate or share the video through Discord or other social media channels that Radius has. So yeah, that's about the events that we participated in the past week. There's also a couple of blog posts out in the past month. So we celebrated the first anniversary of the release of Radius as open source project on October 18th. So this short blog post reflects on the progress that we've made the past year. So we are grateful to everybody who has contributed to Radius, whether through code or testing, or sharing any sorts of feedback. Thank you so much for all your contribution, and we look forward to continuing to work together to make Radius even better platform. So the second blog post here is from one of the newest members of the Radius team, Zach. He has shared his experience about what he has learned from Radius in the past 6 weeks. So this is a great primer for someone who's starting new, or also for someone who needs a quick refresher on what Radius is all about. It helps to build the mental model of Radius. Do check it out and let us know what you think. So next up, I wanted to pass it over to Will to share updates on the Radius roadmap. Over to you, Will.
Thanks, Reshma. So couple of exciting things that are coming down the Radius pipeline in the upcoming weeks from the roadmap. We're currently wrapping up, or I would say about 60% done with the GitOps-based deployments work item. The team is hard at work in building the necessary integrations to deliver integrations with GitOps tools such as Flux and REO-CD. So that will be ongoing, and keep your eye out on future release notes for whenever these features become available. And the team is also building some prototyping for the Terraform recipes containerization. And that should close off the Terraform recipes feature set nicely for us. We've worked really hard on delivering many of the Terraform recipes enhancements this year, and that should be the last piece that closes out this particular roadmap item. And a couple of other things that we are looking and designing. One is user-defined resource types. This is an extensibility feature that is currently in the designing/prototyping phase. And you'll actually get a little bit of a preview later on today from Ryan Nowak, who will demo the progress that we have made there. We're also starting our investigation into serverless container runtime. So if you can tune into some of the sessions in Ignite, you'll probably hear a little bit about some of this as well. But the serverless container runtime item, we're going to start designing and prototyping here as well. And then Dapr integration into the control plane. This is something that is also on our roadmap and kind of slated next for us to look at and investigate. And then, of course, there's all the other accepted items that are in stack rank priority order based on what we've heard from the community. So yeah, if you have any questions about any of these, feel free to reach out to us, and definitely go into this link here on this page and go upvote and comment on items that speak to you, because your upvotes and your comments will be the data points that we use to decide what the next items to be worked on will be. So definitely go check it out, and keep your eye out on the release notes for some of these future releases of features that are coming down the pipeline. Thanks, Rashma.
Thanks, Will. Thanks for those updates on the roadmap. So just quickly wanted to share some of the highlights from the .39 and .40 release. So one of our community members, Lucas, has added the support for Dapr configuration building block in Radius. So you can now define the resource type application.dapr/configuration on configuration store in Radius. So what this allows is this allows for dynamic configuration updates, including feature flag management, and it's a great addition to the set of like Dapr features that we have in Radius. So thanks Lucas for the contribution. We'd also be like seeing a demo on that in like a couple of minutes. So there's also an implementation that we've added for the in-memory version of the data store interface. So this can be used for testing and development purposes when contributing to Radius. So what this does is this simplifies the existing etcd and mocking mechanisms that are used today in tests. And then we have resolved an usability issue where the RADCLI prompt was actually getting truncated if the user's terminal window was small. So the RADCLI prompt terminal now line wraps to match the size of the user's terminal window. And then there are a bunch of other like testing and other fixes that went into the .39 and .40 release. So here's the full change log of both these releases. Thanks to everyone who contributed to this release. Also wanted to like give a shout out to C Kansara 16 who has made their first contribution. So this is one of the good first issues that he fixed. So for new contributors who are interested in contributing, just wanted to like share a couple of resources here. So the first link here covers the good first issues across all the repositories of Radius. So these are issues that are like items that you can like pick up as a new contributor. So they have like enough context and details on where exactly you have to like go and make a code change. So these are items for you to like get started. And the second link here covers dashboard specific issues. So if you are interested in the front end experience, these issues might be good one for you to get started. And also, if you have any questions related to these good first issues, please add them as comments in the issue itself. Our triage team regularly like looks into these issues, and if you need any more context, we'll be able to like provide them as well. If you want like real-time help, please use our Discord channel as well to ask questions or like to get clarification on these issues. The Radius team would be able to like help immediately. So that's on the good first issues. So let's move into the demo. I'm going to share a recording from Lucas, one of the community members who has added the Dapr configuration building block support. So let me go ahead and start the recording. Sorry. Thanks to Lucas for sharing an awesome demo here. Ryan Ogwak has shared a couple of like pointers and resources in the chat as well for people who are interested to take a look and know more about this support. So next up, Nick, one of the community members, Nick, he's going to share his journey about moving from zero to commit, basically on what he learned with getting started with contributing to Radius. Over to you, Nick.
Great. Thank you, Reshma. Let me just share my screen here. Here we go. This one here. Now, does that look good to everyone?
Yeah.
All right, great. I'm on a laptop, so I only get one screen, so it's always a challenge. All right, so this is my story. I got involved with Radius about a year ago, just before it was open sourced, through a collaboration between my company Comcast and Microsoft. And I've kind of been on this journey for the last year as a contributor. So one of the things that I got the privilege of was Ryan. I worked with Ryan quite a bit at the beginning of this, but working with Ryan's not scalable. So the team asked me if I could sort of give you guys a quick overview of how I started from zero to my first commit and then to my first feature as well. So, sorry, excuse me. So getting started, and thankfully, Reshma's already shared a good link to find the first issues. I went and found an issue. I started with defects. So I started with a couple of CLI defects, and then I went on and I forked the repo, which was fairly simple. And then I started looking to mash some keys. So working in Radius, Radius is quite a large code base, but the team has done a really good job of putting together some VS Code launch files that allow you to debug and to spin up the entire Radius platform. But at the same time, only spin up the piece that you need. So there is some documentation which I sort of share around like pointing to a local control plane and things like that. But the best way that I found to start learning the code base was to actually just start working on some issues, starting small with the good first issues, and then working from there. So after that, after I tested, updated my tests, the usual story, I submitted a PR and then waited for my tongue lashing, which didn't arrive. So that's another nice aspect with this team is that everyone is very positive. Lots of good feedback on the PR. Nothing that was kind of like outlandish, and it was just a really good experience. So I made up my updates, I got my feedback, made some changes, and then merged and profit. And that was a great moment. And to get my first PR merged and to see my name turn up in the release notes at the end of the month was, that was great. So after that, going from the commit to feature is a little bit more involved. So I looked at the backlog, there wasn't anything there, but there was a feature that I was looking for that I thought was missing that you could achieve in a very roundabout way, which was being able to sort of share Kubernetes secrets as environment variables. So before my feature, would have to do this through PodSpec, but I felt like it should be something that should be native to Radius itself. So this was the feature I came with. The project management team pointed me at the design documentation, and I drafted the design doc. And from there, we went to a design review. Now, there's a slightly entertaining story here because I come from a different development culture. What the Radius team does is that everyone goes off camera and everyone raises their hand, when they're finished reading, which is great. I didn't realize this at the time. And usually when you put your hand up, that means you have a question. So all I saw was like all these hands going up, and I was just like sort of horrified that like there was going to be a dozen questions coming my way, not realizing that was just how their process worked. And it was meant to be like a non-confrontational way to say, hey, I'm finished and I'm ready to move forward. Yeah, well, I know that now, and I've actually brought that back to Comcast, and that's kind of like how we'd start doing our reviews. If we're reviewing things like PRDs or any design documentation, it's just a really nice way of like people not feeling like they have to hurry, that they can take their time, and we found we get better sort of design outcomes from it. So we attended the design for it. Oh, look, we're back to mashing some keys now. This is always my favorite part, and in my role, I don't get to do enough of it. So when Radius came along, I thought, well, this is a fabulous chance to just write more code and draw fewer pictures. So again, I worked with Ryan, got some feedback on how to implement it, and then built it up into a PR, which was then we went back through the process. A lot of good feedback, and a lot of kind feedback. I read an article a few years ago. It was a PRs with kindness or something like that. And it really sort of embodied here. Everyone was super supportive, and it was just a really good experience overall. And then once that was done, we're back to merge and we profit. And I suppose I could have added another arrow in just to sort of loop back around, but for that. So to finish off, I guess a few PRs and a few commits later, I did sort of apply for membership and was accepted. So I guess that is the sort of accumulation of effort to become like a sort of member of the project and start moving things forward. And I'm looking forward to working on and submitting my next few PRs for features and other fixes. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do want to start draft maybe a sort of getting started document, because there's quite a lot of good information that I got from Ryan that's not in some of the documentation. But that's about it. Happy to answer any questions.
Just some comments. I love the idea. Well, first, thanks, Nick, for both all the engagement and also giving this talk. I think it's super helpful for folks to get a sense of the experience of somebody just starting to onboard and going from kind of simpler contributions to more detailed or more substantive contributions. So that's cool to have this. I love the idea of, as you just mentioned, kind of help either pointing out gaps in the documentation or just helping fill out the gaps in documentation around contribution. I think I think we took a good first cut at that, but having the critical eye of somebody who's been through it and sees, understands where there's gaps to fall through. So that's super valuable. And then the last comment, I think it's awesome that the kind of the team culture came through in the review process, and that was a pleasant thing because a lot of times that can be very uncomfortable. I think the hands up story, as you know, I think is hysterical, but I'm really glad to hear that the sort of team culture came through as supportive and welcoming around contributions. So just thanks for all the work and for putting this presentation together. Super helpful.
Yeah, no, you're welcome, John. I mean, I've had some like horrifying experiences, contributing, and this was
Right.
pleasantly the complete opposite. So no, I'd be happy to contribute more.
Awesome. Thank you. Other questions, comments?
I thought it was fun. It's Nick's not giving himself enough credit because what he actually did was made a breaking change that touched like a ton of documentation and samples and functional tests. So he's not completely giving himself enough credit for the work that he did. Was a big thing, and it was one of those features that we knew we needed to do for a really long time, but we knew like nobody wanted to work on it because it wasn't going to be fun. And then we found somebody that thought it was fun. So win-win.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that must be like the Scottish masochism that they keep talking about.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and comments. And thank you so much, Nick, for sharing your journey with us. And we are looking forward to continue collaborating with us and delivering some awesome features in the future. So next up, I'm gonna pass it over to Ryan Novak to share more and share some updates on the progress that we made on user-defined types. So yeah, over to you, Ryan. Start
Great,
sharing.
thanks. Thank you, Rashma. All right, everybody should be seeing the Radius to-do application. It looks like it's coming through. So this will be a fairly self-contained demo. I'm going to talk you through I'm going to talk you through a little bit of what's the scenario we're solving with user-defined types, and then we'll build one, and then hopefully by the end you're convinced that this is a good idea and something you want to be a user of. So just to start with, I think since the Web 2.0 days, everybody's built to-do applications as kind of the standard, like, oh, I've got to build a demo for a new framework or a new tool. To-do is like the go-to. But then this thing happened called ChatGPT, and so now AI is just everywhere. And so I thought it'd be awesome if we could revamp our Radius demo website with some AI. So I've added a button here. I work for Microsoft, and of course we're putting Copilot and everything. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could get Copilot to give me feedback on the quality of my to-do items? Am I capturing the right level of detail? Or like, is this thing even a good idea? So I've got a proposed to-do item here. Show this to the community call. And let's see if we can get Copilot to give us some feedback on this. So you can see I've got a little error message here. AI is not configured, so I have no feedback for you. And that's because we haven't added AI to this application. And there are two reasons why we haven't added AI to this application yet. One is there's no support for AI in Radius, and two is we just haven't done the work. So now I'm going to take off my developer hat and put on my sort of platform engineer, IT operator hat, and let's enable our developers to start building applications with AI. And that's where user-defined types enter the picture. And that's going to be the rest of our story is I want to prove to you that you could do this and that it would be easy to do. Today, the set of things that are in Radius are kind of fixed and you can't extend them. And so I want to prove to you that we're going to make that extensible, which is what the UDT feature is, and also that it's going to be kind of exciting and easy. So let's jump over to the editor. Over here, just in case anybody's not super familiar with what's going on in Radius, I'll give you a very minor refresher on this. So I've got the app described here in Bicep. Here's my container. I've got a Redis cache that I'm using to store my to-do items. And then I've got a connection to that Redis cache here, which is how the settings and things get wired up. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to put another thing here, because here in Radius, we're talking about your whole application. And if some kind of AI service like an OpenAI model is going to be part of my app, then I'd like to talk about it as part of our app. We think that's better if you could talk about all of your dependencies. And so what I'd ultimately like to type here is I'd like to type something like resource AI, and then something goes here that does AI for me. And if we look, all of these applications dot things are the things that come in the box with Radius. So there's applications core is kind of core microservices stuff. Dapr, I'm not up to date with Lucas's change, which is why you're not seeing configuration stores here. There's some things to do with databases and messaging, but there's nothing to do with AI. One of the other options I might have would be to do something on Azure using Azure OpenAI. So I could do that, but then the problem is I'd be asking all my developers to understand how to configure the OpenAI service. And that's probably not right, because they may not have permission. And even if they do have permission, they probably don't know how to do that in a way that is cost controlled, secure, and compliant with our policies for things like responsible AI. So I don't want to just give unfettered power to everybody building an app. As a platform builder, we're going to do two steps. I'll build it into the platform, and then I'll expose it to my developers so they can start leveraging it. So that's kind of the motivation for what we're going to do and what it's going to look like when we're done. And let's build it into the platform. So I'll get my terminal back here. Over here in the editor, I've got one that I've already made, and there's a lot of text here, so I'm just going to talk through this. So at the top, we're defining a new namespace called example.platform. We can put a list of types in there. I'm going to create one called OpenAPI service or OpenAI services. I hope everybody can appreciate that I'm going to be saying both OpenAI and OpenAPI. So I'm going to beg your forgiveness as I inevitably get it wrong a few more times. I've got both in this demo. I'm going to define one API version for that. And then here is that OpenAPI schema. So I'm defining a schema for a resource type. If you flip back over here and you think about like, how does the validation and completion experience around all of these types work? Like, how does the editor know that there's a field here called container? Well, that's all driven by this schema. And most of this is boilerplate. I want to highlight this capacity field. So we're going to let the developer choose a capacity for their OpenAI service. See, I did it right there. And the valid values are going to be small, medium, and large. This is very much in line with how we're seeing people think about platform engineering in the industry. On the back end, whatever service you're talking to probably thinks about capacity and rate limits in a different way, but you're crafting a vocabulary you want your developers to work. As the platform team, we want our developers to think about small, medium, large. We don't want them to understand the ins and outs of every service that they're talking to. So remember this capacity field. I promise we'll come back to it. And then the other thing that I'll highlight here, this is complicated, but just trust me, you see this capabilities recipe here. What this means is this type is designed to be used with recipes, and I'll show that when we get a little bit further in the demo. So, okay, so I've written a schema. What can I do with this schema? How do I enable my developers to make use of this now that I've just written a schema file? And there's a couple things that I will want to do. So the first thing that I'll want to do is I'll want to tell Radius about this schema. So I've got this command, rad resource provider create. And this is a new command. All this stuff is new. It'll probably be in like the next release, so probably be in 41 in some kind of working form with some kind of documentation. So look forward to that. Right now, this is just on my computer. So I'll run rad resource provider create, and you can see that it's doing stuff to the server. So we're telling Radius about this type. All of these definitions that we put in here have been registered with Radius. You can think of this as like we're uploading this schema and now Radius knows about it. And ultimately what we've done is we've made Radius aware of this, and there are now new API endpoints on the server. So there's now new functionality on the server that we haven't built, or we didn't have before and we couldn't interact with before just by uploading the schema. And so if you're familiar with Kubernetes and how extensibility works in Kubernetes, you might just be saying, this feels a lot like a CRD, and you would be right. So this is a lot like a Kubernetes CRD. And if you want to think of it as Kubernetes CRDs for Radius, I think that's an appropriate way to think about it. I think that's mostly accurate. So, okay, so I've told Radius about this. What are some other things I'd like to do? Well, you'll notice that I haven't created any implementations of this. So I uploaded the schema and Radius now has API endpoints, but I haven't really said what's going to happen when I create one of these things. So if I try to create an OpenAI service, what do you think is going to happen? The answer is error message, right? Because Radius doesn't know how to create this. I've only told it what the schema is. I haven't told it what to do when I want one. And in order to do that, we're going to borrow an existing feature that we have called recipes. So we're actually already using a recipe in this demo for Radius, or for Redis. And I keep doing this to myself. I've got Radius and Redis, and then I've got OpenAI and OpenAPI. I don't know why I do this to myself. And I'll just a refresher here on recipes. You'll notice that I didn't say anything here about like, I want to run Redis and Kubernetes in a container. I want to create a Redis cache on AWS. I want to create a Redis cache on Amazon or GCP. And that's by design, right? So we don't want developers to necessarily interact with these cloud resources directly in their application definitions. We want to allow the platform to provide them. And recipes are the way that the platform provides it. So when this request comes in to create Redis, Radius is going to bind that to an existing recipe and use that recipe to create the underlying infrastructure. So now I'll just sort of prove that to you, because I already gave the Redis part of this demo. And if you look here, you'll see some interesting stuff. So in my environment where I'm deploying, I've got a recipe for Redis cache. Recipes, if they're based on Bicep, are stored in container registries. So this is one that's kind of built into Radius. And then you can see that I cheated a little bit, and I actually already uploaded a recipe for my OpenAI service. I did that off screen while I was setting up the demo. So I can use recipes to provide the implementation of how these things come together. And this is a use case that we see a lot, which is I want to glue together a bunch of existing services under a common abstraction. And that's what we're doing here. So in order to expose OpenAI service to our developers, we're going to glue together a bunch of existing tech. Now I'm going to be showing bicep recipes in this demo. Recipes can also be Terraform. And there's lots of good use cases where you might want to use Terraform instead of bicep if Terraform's a tech you like, or if you're already using it, or if you just think it's better for your use case. We're not opinionated about it. But I will be showing bicep here just because that's what I built for this. So let's take a look at what that recipe looks like. And if you're familiar with recipes, this isn't different from any other recipe. So using a recipe to create services in Azure or AWS is something we can already do today. This isn't really a new capability. I'm just explaining how we intend for all this stuff to be used. So the anatomy of a recipe is like this. So step one, you get some data from Radius. That's this context object. And Radius is going to tell the recipe a bunch of operational stuff. And that could be like, this is the VNet you're on. This is the VPC you're on. This is where you should send logs. This is the Kubernetes namespace you can put things in. So we don't want to hard code that data in the recipe because then the recipe may not be reusable. Recipes are designed to be reusable and shared. That's why we pass data in. Some of that data that's going to get passed in is the body of the resource. And Bicep is complaining at me. But I'll distill what's happening in this line of code. If you remember that capacity field, we're going to take that capacity field, we're going to default it to medium, and then we're going to look that up in a table to map that to a capacity value that this Azure service understands. And this is the platform engineering part of this, right? We want to give our developers something that's straightforward. And like this isn't super straightforward, right? Like having these numerical capacity values. So the second thing that's going on here is we're creating all the infrastructure we need to create. In this case, we're creating a cognitive services account and we're deploying GPT-3.5 Turbo to that. So just think of this as like whatever glue you need to put here. There aren't rules about what you can put here. It's whatever is appropriate for your scenario. So I'm just creating, OpenAI directly. If I needed to set up logging or if I wanted to use an API gateway as a proxy, there's lots of different things you can do in recipes. I'm just showing a simple one. And then sort of the third thing that happens here is I return some data back that the app is going to need. And all this information is going to get injected into the app. It's also going to populate properties of that resource type, which I'll show you in a sec. So that's my recipe. I've already registered the types with Radius. I've already uploaded a recipe to the environment. So Radius should be able to create them. The third thing that I need to do is I need to give this to my developers. And let's do that now. So something else that I did off screen is I generated the bicep support for this. So if I type extension here, you can see completion of extensions. And there's another, I just called this one example, very creative on my part. But you can see that we've got an extension here called example. And as soon as I complete that and type that in, we should see some new functionality light up here. So now we can complete this example platform OpenAI services just like we had in our schema. And I can just tab complete all that, and Copilot is super happy with it. I want to highlight a couple other things here just to prove to you that this is real. So you can see that Copilot understands that capacity value. We even can get a tooltip for that. It looks like I moved it pretty fast. The other thing about this is that it is fully schematized. So if I wanted to do something here like, say, OpenAI API key, right, and get that, I can actually just interact with all of these properties that were in my schema. So you can see like the things that I'm returning from the recipe. I think I showed you these values coming out of the recipe. These are now part of the API of this resource. So any way that I wanted to interact with this data, it's all available through the API because I declared it as part of my API surface. I don't need that for this demo. And then the last thing that I need to do is I'll add a connection here. So I'm just going to say that this thing is connected to my app. And I can do rad run app.bicep. It's going to deploy that. And the things, just to sort of answer some questions up front. So these types that you can add, through your own, you'll notice that like I didn't make a custom build of Radius to do this. I just added functionality. I didn't write any new code that runs inside the control plane. I just uploaded some IAC templates. And this is first class. So like the things that are in the box don't get special privileges. We're going to have the same feature set across types that the community builds separately from the open source project. and things that we put in the box with Radius. We actually don't want there to be a lot of distinctions. For most of what we've put in the box, we're actually going to gradually replat those things on the new functionality. So like this functionality here for Redis will actually be replatted on top of this. And so it looks like that worked. So the message here is these types that you add yourself are as first class as the things that we build in. And we're gonna work to use it and dog food it as much as possible inside the project. That's how we'll know it's right. So back here on our container info, I've got this AI section with all the settings that got injected. I'm not going to show it because there is a credential in here and I want to keep my job. But there is, settings and things that got injected because of that connection. Over here on the to-do list, I can show this to the community call. And let's get some feedback on that. So apparently Copilot thinks that this is a great idea to increase the visibility and engagement, which sounds a lot like what Reshma asked me to do. So looks like it's working end to end. So just to recap what you saw, I needed some functionality that's not in Radius today. I needed to interact with cloud services that we don't support. I designed my own abstraction for that. I got that to be part of Radius's API in a first-class way without building any new server-side functionality. I used an existing feature, recipes, to do all the provisioning of that. And then I generated tooling support for my developers so that they can interact with it in a way that is strongly typed, first-class, has validation, has completion and tooltips and everything, kind of self-documenting. And some new things that we'll be doing with this. So this feature will be rolling out. A lot of this code is actually already in main, just not in a way that you can really use it. Like this full end-to-end isn't working yet in the main branch. That's kind of my project for the next couple of weeks. So this will be making its way into main. I'm tentatively hoping for 41, but it might be 42 before we have something useful here. Some of the other things that we'll be doing is we'll be setting up a community curated repo for types that goes with our community curated repo for recipes. So if you try this out, if you build interesting stuff, we'd love to have you help contribute to that repo. Basically how that's going to work is we'll have a repo that we maintain. We'll set up a development process, a testing process, and kind of a quality QA process for that repo. And we'll want to make it easy for you. So if there's something you're doing or you just want to try this out and contribute something back to us, we'll sort of take it and maintain it from there. We want to build out the library of stuff that you can do with Radius. So look for that in the coming months. Any questions about this before I sort of put it away? Anything anybody wants to see again? Three, two, one. Okay, silence is acceptance. Back to you, Reshma.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to bring back the...
And Reshma, just one comment following on that great
Sure.
demo. Ryan referred to some of this in his demo, but it's been interesting to see kind of the response to this level of extensibility of Radius. He mentioned a couple of times platform engineering teams, and when we were at KubeCon, and just like last year, that was a really prominent topic at the event, and we talked. Continue to talk to a lot of platform engineering teams, and this level of extensibility and flexibility is one of the things that really helps make Radius more usable and integratable with ongoing platform engineering efforts and internal developer platforms that are in flight today. So this is a big step forward for Radius, particularly for that audience. So thanks for the work and the awesome demo, Ryan Nowak.
I actually want to mention one more thing related to UDT and extensibility, that I was looking through the list of attendees and I was like, oh, there's one person on this list that won't let me forget this. So I showed a use case that's like, I need to add a new external dependency. So something outside of my app that I want to interact with in OpenAI. Another use case that we're targeting for this is if you want to build your own opinionated abstractions. So if you want to build, for example, web app with TLS certificate as an opinionated abstraction that you expose to developers or consume as a developer. Something that's made up of existing Radius functionality, but layers it together in sort of an opinionated, curated way. That's another use case for this. There's probably a few more features that we need to support that, but it's something we're definitely thinking about. if you like this stuff and if you're interested, we would love to talk to you because we'd love some people to give us feedback as soon as this is in a usable state so that we know that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, definitely +1 to that. So if you have any questions or feedback related to UDT, and once the feature is out, or even now, if you have any scenarios that you are looking to implement using UDT, just let us know either in Discord or through the issue. So that brings us to the end of the session. I just wanted to share a couple of resources here. The first link is the Discord channel. Engage with us on Discord. And if you like what you see in GitHub, start our repo. As I mentioned earlier, there's this radap_io Google group that for all the latest Radius news. We'll be back soon with our next community call date. I think it's going to be in the New Year's. So meanwhile, if you have any sort of like questions, or like if you need any help, any troubleshooting help, please engage with us in Discord. We'll be active in Discord. And as always, let us know what you think. If you have any feedback scenarios that you want to see in Radius, just let us know in the roadmap issues or via Discord. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for attending. I'm just gonna like stop the recording here and open the floor for Q&A.